So L2 basically deals with the idea of dealing with multiple possibilities in terms of understanding how different aspects of architecture comes together. As far as my colleagues are working with, they all are working with very interesting topics in themselves. My studio basically works with the idea of cities and sort of understanding city and its people, its culture, and how does that reflect in architecture. So the name of the studio is Project Mode, and the tagline for this studio is intersection between communities and architecture and communities. So we basically understand the idea of how a community takes part in a built environment, and sort of how should I say this thing, understanding those very small elemental approach towards like, okay, why this particular element looks like this, because a particular community behaves in that way. So that is something what we focus more on. Approach behind the studio is very simple, that we don't really believe in the idea of sort of having we don't believe in the idea of sort of having what should I say, a very textbook kind of an approach. We actually go to the city. So that's what we did. So before going to the city, we actually did a small research, which was like a community research of how does communities work. That's what we did. After that, we studied spatial dynamics, the idea of how a space is developed, how a space is designed. After that, we had an entire trip to Udaipur. So the city which we have selected is Udaipur, and the reason behind selecting Udaipur was very interesting. That Udaipur and its community is a very interesting community itself, not just because it's tourism famous, but also it boasts from a very how should I say this thing, popular as well as well received community throughout the Indian cultural zygote when you try to look at it. So we went to Udaipur. We were there for around 6 days, and at Udaipur, the market which we have selected, the location we selected is Hathipol market. What we did was we went to Udaipur. At the Hathipol market, these students basically studied people, place, and pattern, understanding that particular community in three particular perspectives. People, what kind of people are they able to identify with their place? What kind of a place it actually has, architecturally planned, city planning wise, even cultural planning wise, and then pattern. What kind of an interaction happens between people and place, and what exactly works out accordingly. So for this, I sort of wanted to, how should I say this thing, promote the idea of planning, which is, how should I say this, sensitive towards communities, sensitive towards people, and how do people actually interact in a particular space. So that is something which I wanted to, like push my students towards, that if you're designing something, let's say, even if it is at a very small village or something like that, you still need to understand that, the village sort of carries its own very strong identity, and you can't just design something very alien over there. You would have to understand the people, you would have to understand how the communities behave in that particular way, and then eventually you come up with a very cohesive architectural approach. Well, every L2 student basically has 4 cycles to choose from, and they basically go in a direction where they could choose something with planning and organization, construction and specification, visualization, communication. These are like the parallels, right? So I usually say this thing, that I don't really say that, okay, you have to be in my studio on the first cycle or second. I say do attempt the studio, because eventually what happens is that architecture is a mix of multiple aspects, like innovation, construction, all of these things do eventually take a part of our career, but understanding the base of how communities work, function, because eventually we are the people who serve the community, who serve the people. So if you don't understand people, you don't understand architecture. So that's why I usually say that, if you want to be a part of Project Mode, we will make you sensitive towards users, we will make you sensitive towards this very small festivities, activities and all, and sort of design according to that.